Ah, yes, Highlander. You have to use the quickening. And then you can kiss my sweaty balls, you fat fuck. Greetings, the Astro 30 here, and bad Sean Connery impressions aside, I have some presents to play with today. Well, actually, I've had these sitting around for the last week and a half, and I just haven't bothered to open them. They've been sitting on the floor in the other room, waiting for the opportunity to open them for this project. Now, this box down here is my 3-unit, or I believe it's 120mm high, 19-inch rack mount case for the amplifier, and this box contains 2 transformers and some knobs, and I believe that's all I ordered. Let's see, yeah, knobs, toroidal transformer and rack case. That is correct. So for them now, we don't need this box. We'll look at that one a little later. First, I'm going to open this one. Just got to figure out how. So, cut through all this tape shit. As I see. Yep, it's double boxed, so that's alright. So, let me just get this packaging off and we'll have a look. And within the box, just like a TARDIS, we have another box. So, I need to cut the tape on this so I can open the box. Now, this all looks pretty snazzy. Yeah, check it out. Got the, I believe this is the, is that smaller? Yeah, that one's smaller. So this is the sub panel, the internal chassis panel. So that can go to the side for a minute. That's the rear panel. Pretty big, isn't it? This is the front panel. And as I said, I believe that's 120mm high. So I'll just do a quick measurement to verify. More like 131, something like that, 130. I was close. Anyway, so that's the front panel. And of course, in here we're going to have the 2 sides. Assembly instructions, we don't need them. Yeah, 2 sides. Handles. Bag of screws. 4 mounting rails, which I'm going to be using all 4, and you'll see why. And of course, under this last bit of cardboard here, we have one cover, which can be either the top or bottom, it doesn't matter. So I'll move him over here, because I don't need him. Take out this bit of cardboard, throw it across the room, and we have the final panel. So there we go, that's the complete contents of the box removed. And from what I can see, it looks like it's all there. So we'll get rid of this box. And now I have absolutely nothing to show you. No, anyway, so we've got our rails and our sides. So there is a specific way these go up. Now, from memory, this is the back, because this lip on here is what the back panel screws to. So that would have to face towards the back, but it really doesn't matter which way up or down is. You've got 3 sets of ventilation holes here and 1 here. On the 2-unit case, it's just 1 up here, 1 down here. So you could make that the bottom, we could make it the top. I'm going to make it the top. So we would put them the right way around. In actual fact, it looks like I can only make it on the top on this. No, I can if I rotate them 180 degrees. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay, so a little something like that. That's not going to stand up on its own. I mean, it's going to be a little bit wider than that, obviously. So what I might do is I might put 2 rails in the bottom here, which is going to be my chassis mount point, and we'll just have a look at that aluminium sheet that I've got. Yeah, anyway, I've got it semi together. I've got the sub panel mounted on just for reference only. I've got the aluminium sheet sitting just on the 2 rails in the bottom there. Now, I'll just turn this around and we can see that there is quite a bit of overlay, because this rail here is what the sub panel's mounted to, but it will still slide underneath that aluminium sheet just fine. But we've got, I reckon, well, I reckon that's around 10 millimeters if my alignment is accurate. But I'll just have a look here. About 9, so close to 10. That rear rail has to sit at least 5 millimeters in from the edge to allow for the screw that goes in through the rear panel to mount to it correctly, and it doesn't actually interfere with the rail. The screws are 5 millimeters long, so you take the thickness of the panel away, that's about 1.5 mil, so that still leaves, plus that 1 mil, that still leaves about 3 mil sticking out, so at least 4 to 5 millimeters distance between the flap here and, or the lip, and the rail. And I did think about mounting this underneath the rail and it will still clear the bottom panel fine. There's just one problem with that. Got no way of mounting it. So yeah, that kind of messed that idea up. So mounting the screws on screw holes for this rail are easy, because they can go flush with the edge of it. This edge with the rail under it, which is sitting 9 millimeters in, is a little bit harder. So I'd have to measure that really accurately before drilling it, because yeah, I don't want to make a mistake. But I suppose the next step would be to mark out where my holes are going to be drilled, probably clean this panel up a bit, drill it and mount it. Just so we can have at least one part of the hardware done, and it still doesn't interfere with the panel. I can still unscrew the chassis if I need to without any front panel hardware mounted, of course. If the front panel hardware was mounted on there, well, you disconnect it all wiring wise and you just take the panel off, and that gets rid of that componentry out the way, and then the same with the rear panel can be removed, and then you just lift out the chassis. But yeah, so I've got to figure out now how the hell I'm going to do that. I probably should have waited until I got the case before having this piece of aluminium cut, because I could have actually had it cut, instead of at 300, I could have had it cut at, well, 290. 10 mil shorter, and then I could have just mounted it flush with the rails, and then just this rail would have slid back a bit and it would have just fitted nicely. But I didn't, so I'm going to have to make the best of what I've got here. So I suppose the easiest way to measure this would be to take the panel out, and that hole center is now going to be so at the 20 mark, I'm looking at 31. So minus 20, that's 281 millimeters from hole center to hole center. Okay, and verify that on the other side. It's more like 32 on that side. Hang on. Yeah, 32. I'm going to say 282 between hole centres. Ta-da! And the chassis is now in. Now it's not screwed down tight. I ended up drilling out these holes for the screws to 5mm just to give it a little bit of leeway movement back and forth. And my measurement was probably about 1/2 mil out on one corner. It wasn't too bad, so it's now back together, and it's all loosely put back together, so it, you know, looks straight. I couldn't think where I was going with that, but I'm just looking at it visually to make sure it looks square was the word I was looking for. And when I was drilling this aluminium, I noticed that it was bits of plastic peeling off, and I'm like, what the hell? And I realised there's a plastic protective sheet over the top of one side of the aluminium to protect the face. Duh, that's why plastic was coming off. That's why the edges, when I was looking at them, didn't look like they were cut properly. It's like all hairy, and I'm like, those are not metal shavings. Yeah, anyway. So I've got that bit done. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm the Astro 30, and if you enjoyed this video, please remember to rate, comment, and no, I'm joking. We're nowhere near finished this video yet. I'm just going to turn this around for all of yous so you can actually see what I'm looking at here. So, albeit there's fingerprints on it now, I should have left the protective sheet on there until I was finished, but meh. So that panel will slide back and forth. I did actually end up running out of screws. I was 3 of these big 4mm black screws short for the sub panel. However, it was a good job I kept the screws from the other case because I didn't have a sub panel, so I wouldn't have ended up using all the screws. I think they give you like 4 extra screws in the kit in total, so you'll always end up with 4 over because they don't fit anywhere else. As far as I know, they don't fit anywhere else. Yeah, they do. You need 4 for the handles on the front panel, of course. So I'm just going to make sure I've got another 4, because if not, I'm going to have to take these out and change them over for some M4 screws that I've already got. I just thought I'd use them because they were closer and convenient. I have 6 left in my little stash, so I've got plenty for the handles, so I'm not worried about that at this stage. Now, next thing to move on to is I'm going to open that other package, that other box, and we're going to have a look at its contents. And, oh, just like that. God. Anyway, let's open this box here, eh? God, that stunk. Okay, calm down. Right, it's only a fart. It's not even that fucking funny. Actually, yeah, it is. Right, so we open this box, and oh, I love this stuff. I love making noise with that stuff. There's some more. Ooh, that was loud. Alright, so let's get rid of these air bubbles. Piece of packing foam. Don't know why that was just like that, but anyway. There we go, there's another one. Okay, so got some knobs. I thought that knob was going to be bigger than what it is, but it's not. But these are actually a lot smaller than I thought they were going to be. Yeah. Alright, so we have got one humongous power transformer, 300 VA, 35 plus 35, and one empty box, tiny little transformer. So we'll open this up. Mounting washer, bolt and nut. It appears that we're missing Oh no, you don't need one. I was about to say the mounting cup's missing, but no, this one just, yeah, put the rubber on the bottom and then just put the bolt and nut up. It's already got something on top there to grip to. Or is that the top? Well, it's got actually a recess in there, so maybe it goes that way. Well, it would have to, because the wires would have to come out the top. Anyhow, yeah, I'll figure that out when I mount it in the case later. So that's fine. That transformer and this big ass transformer, mounting cup, 2 neoprene washers, transformer, and by the looks of things, no fucking bolt. Are you fucking serious? Really? You didn't supply the bolt? That was nice of you. Oh, fuck's sake. Anyhow, I think I can figure out something to that. I believe these bolts that I've got here will be more than long enough. So I'll just have to have a look and see. Yeah, I think I'll get away with that. Because I've got a good 12mm sticking up from the top. Of course, that's going to mount down the chassis further. Yeah, I'll have a look. I'll see if I can make that work. Even if there's just a couple of threads there to bolt to, that'll be great. These neoprene washers aren't that thick anyway, so they won't take up much of the distance. But it would have been really nice to see the bolt, but they didn't supply it for some excuse me, strange reason. Yeah, I think I can make that work. These nuts are only, or they're square nuts. They're only like about 4mm thick. So I can solve that issue. Don't know if I can get a longer bolt. I'll have a look. These are 60mm long by 1/4 inch, so I might be able to get my 80mm long if I have to. That'll be something for another day and not today, because I was just mainly interested in what I had in the contents. I should have opened it because the fucking bolt's missing. They give you the rest of the mounting hardware bar the bolt. For some reason it was missing out the box, so I don't know. So anyway, I'm going to put that back in its box for now and just put that over the side. Now this knob here is supposed to be 38mm in diameter. Or was it 29? I can't remember. It wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. I did want a slightly large knob, but it didn't happen. Get rid of that. Come out of there. The grub screw, don't lose it. So that goes in there, and I'll do him up so I don't lose it. Okay, so that's going to be the volume knob. Yeah, considering the case is 3 unit, which is 130 high roughly, it's going to look rather small on the front panel. And then compared to these 16mm knobs, which I assume are 16mm, yeah, they look about 16mm. Going to look even smaller. But yeah, it is what it is. I can work with that. So that's the well, all the packages opened. I've got all the hardware out and had a look, so I know what I'm up for now. Okay, so I think the next step I will do is I'll just plop the large transformer and the small transformer inside the case, just for some reference. Yep, I think there's going to be enough space. I can afford to move that all the way over too. I want to mount this larger toroidal way up near the back as possible. I've got to leave room for the power socket. I'm using an IEC power socket, one of these with the inbuilt fuse in it. So that's going to be sitting on the back panel somewhere around about out of shot there. So that means the transformer can't go too far back, but even though the wires are routed in the wrong position at the moment, it doesn't matter. Somewhere there, I'll put that all the way over there. I've got to be able to get in there just to solder. It helps to put the thing up the right way. Well, yeah, it doesn't really matter. So somewhere there in the middle of the panel, just about there, I reckon, yeah, around about there. So that should be enough to get in there to solder. I mean, I can solder all the wires with the panel hanging off, that's not a problem. Yeah, I just want to get a visual representation of where it goes. So I just want to know how far in that transformer is from this back edge. Right, so 10, 20, 30, about 30 to 35 millimeters should be fine. Okay, so that gives me a rough idea. Now, this is the bridge rectifier. It's a 30 amp bridge, and that's for the secondary side of the Class D. I also need a point here to mount a star earth and a point for a terminal block, which I might stick in the middle between the two transformers. This transformer I want to keep as far away as I can from the pre-amplification circuitry, which is going to be sitting up this side of the case. But I can't actually put the transformer next to this one, which is what I'd like to do, because there isn't any room. Yeah, so it would have to sit there. And I reckon if I put that there, there's enough clearance for the two boards. The larger board being this one, which is only probably about 4 millimeters deeper than the other one. Yeah, I reckon that'll work. So I'm not going to be mounting any chassis hardware today. That'll be for another day. What I am going to be concerning myself with, apart from farting, is I'm going to drill my front panel. I've got to lay out the panel art, and the thing is, these measurements were supposed to be 40 millimeter. Now I don't know whether it's the CAD software or the calibration of my printer, but it ended up slightly bigger than 40 millimeters. We're looking at about 40 millimeters, 0.5 between centers, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, it's more like 40 and a half, which is a pain in the ass, but I believe my front panel designer software can actually do half millimeters, so that's not a great deal, but I've just got to make sure to measure 300 times and cut once, because once I've drilled the front panel, that's it, there's no going back. So for the next 20 minutes to half an hour, I'm going to sit down and do out the front panel on the CAD software there. Just it's not really a front panel, it's more of a drilling guide than anything else. That'll be stuck over the top of the front panel. So I'll do that, make sure all the measurements are correct, work out where things are going to be placed on the front panel, and yeah, we'll come back. Okay, and a short time later, probably about half an hour, I don't think I've been working like that long, I've got the drilling guide all done. I've made sure that my measurements fit the components on the boards to the incorrect measurements of the boards. So that's got its tolerance there. I've also made sure I got plenty of clearance between the bottom of the board, which is where this phone's label is, which you can't really see. See this phone's label here, from the chassis. So the bottom of the circuit board is just above the H, and the chassis sits around about where the top of my finger is. So I've got all of about probably 6 mil, 7 mil, something like that, a clearance between the bottom of the circuit board and the aluminium chassis. And in retrospect, it's probably a good idea. I went and got a 3-unit case rather than a 2-unit case, or else I would have had a bit of a problem. Now, I've got probably overkill amount of sticky tape on here, but I don't want it to move. So all I need to do now is just center punch these holes, drill them out with a 2.5mm drill bit for a pilot hole, and then mount it to the front of the case so I can then drill the sub panel. Now, the sub panel will be screwed down tight up against the inside face of the front panel here, and I'll just drill through each of these pilot holes once it's mounted to the case. That way I get an accurate placement of the holes to this front panel, to the sub chassis. Alright, so that's what I'm going to be getting on with now. Okay, so with the front panel drilled with pilot holes, I've now screwed it to the case, done up my sub chassis and my sub panel to the side so they're nice and tight, and tighten these up so that, well, at least the front end is all rigid and the sub panel is pushed up as far against the front panel inside that it can be, so it's butting up against it. I've probably got a gap of maybe 2 mil in there, which is fine. So all I need to do now is put my 2mm, 2.5mm drill bit in my drill, pass it in my hand drill up to the panel on the inside, and just drill, and all the way along. So I'm going to use my power drill for this, and this is what I mean how easy it is to drill a sub panel. Also, be careful when you break through that you just don't go punch into the panel or you will mark it. So that's why I do it with burst swaps bushing, that way I'm not going bang. Okay, now I'll do the rest of the holes and we'll come back. So now, when we take the front panel off, we should have a pretty accurate and good representation of how the front panel was drilled. And that means everything should line up reasonably well. So now that remains is to drill out the holes to the correct size now. However, if one of these holes is slightly off, because this is the inside panel, you're not going to see it, you can always massage the hole or holes around a bit just to make things fit. But there's a couple of things I'm going to have to do first, especially on this volume pot. I'm going to have to mark where the locator pin on the pot is and drill another hole. There's also a locator pin on my rotary switch for the input selector, so that has to be marked. There's a little notch here, so that has to be measured and marked and drilled. But I can now do that off of the case. I can now just take this panel straight off and work on it flat. So yeah, I'll get to doing that. These LED holes will probably be drilled up to 6-8 mil or something like that. So the LED can pass through without shorting on the legs. The power switch hole on the sub panel will be drilled. Well, the power switch requires a 19mm hole, the one I'm going to use. So probably about 22mm to allow the shaft of the switch to pass through it. And yeah, everything else is just drilled to the size of the mounting holes of the components. So yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing now. Okay, well, it's coming on. I have, however, run into my first problem. The placement of this volume control, which is just an empty pot just sitting in there for reference, the tone amp doesn't fit. Don't! So what's going to happen is I'm going to have to modify the this circuit board and remake it, because it ain't going to fit. I can't move that volume control, otherwise I'm going to have a huge hole in the front that's going to look like shit. So yeah, that's my first problem. Don't know how I'm going to move it. I might be able to drag the potentiometers across a bit, but I might have to make the board slightly wider out that way, move stuff up and across somehow. So that's a complete fail. And also this circuit board here is in very close contact to this sub-chassis here. There's about probably 2mm clearance. So I'm going to have to come up with a piece of plastic or something to stick to the metalwork here to add as insulation. Still trying to think of how I'm going to fix this stupid tone amp. So more delays. This board is wrong too, anyway I'm just using that as reference. That all works nicely, lines up nicely. So now the next thing to do would be to drill the front panel holes out so that the components slip through the front panel, and see if that at least fits. So there's the panel all drilled there. Had a little bit of an accident there. That hole started to go a little bit elongated. But the thing is, nothing a bit of black texture won't actually fix, because this is going to have letraset on it anyway, and it's going to be sprayed with clear protective lacquer. So yeah, I'll just buy a new black texture permanent marker. So hopefully with a bit of luck this will fit, and I already know it does because I've been checking it as I've been going along. There's a bit of sticky tape still stuck to that. Get rid of that. Probably should clean the panel first. Might be a good idea. Quick wipe over. Okay, that'll do. Now, the only thing is that switch there is a bit annoying, but I can get around that. Like a glove. Nothing scrapes. That's good. Headphone socket fits nicely. Yeah. And we can see that that just mounts nice and flush. None of these nuts are tight, by the way. They're just only on their finger tight. I have got a larger hole in here for the power switch on the sub panel to pass through. In fact, here is my power switch. Also like a glove. So that can go to the side there for a minute. But yeah, I can't even see where I had that slight accident because it was at the top here and you're normally looking down at it, so that's not a big issue. And as for my fuck up on the tone amp, well, it was really more of the fuck up of the placement of the volume control. But with this, what I can do is I can add 10mm to the top of this board here, move the op amp circuitry up, probably 10mm that way, everything down here, and then move it over 10mm, hopefully. I'll get into that when I go into the routing program, and then shave 10mm off that side. Alright, I know that looks pretty stupid without the pots actually cut down to the correct size, but yeah, they look reasonable. I noticed the alignment of this hole for the switch is off. Now, everything else seems to line up okay bar that, so what I think I might do is I might just drill that hole out a little bit bigger on the sub panel just to give me maneuverability that way with the switch. Everything else looks alright. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my LED holes line up with the holes in the front panel. Well, they line up with the holes in the sub, and I know that the LED holes line up with the holes in the sub, so yeah, it should all line up. Even if it twists at a slight angle, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, see that scratch there? That's that was nasty. That's where the tip of the drill bit went across it. That happens. So a little bit of black tester will fix that blemish, no problem. Other than that, it's looking fucking excellent. Now, I'm a little bit disappointed with the size of that knob. It kind of looks yeah, right. So that's most of the hardware done apart from the back panel, and of course doing the chassis. But I might just fix this hole up in here, because I don't want to mess around with the hole on the outside too much, because yeah, it'll just make it look crap. That thread lines up with that hole, so I know that so does that one, so I know that the case is square. So it's just either this hole got drilled off when I was drilling it through the sub panel and moved that way slightly, whichever, or this hole when it was being drilled moved that way. I don't know, but yeah, it is pretty far away, isn't it? And there's not much I can do about that. I mean, that's just how long the switch is. I mean, it functions. It's just strange. So yeah, anyway, I'll fix that in a second. So I'll pull the knobs back off. I know what it looks like now. And yeah, move on. Alright, well, I fixed the location of the switch. I just took a drill bit and just went and elongated it a little bit that way. Now it fits nice and flush. You may also notice I've cut down the shafts to where they need to be. And it ended up the pots had to have about 8mm taken off, well, exactly 8mm taken off the end, and the switch had to take 18mm off the end. I thought I might as well do the switch as well. Even though the board behind it is wrong, I'm going to take the switch back off the board and reuse the switch. No big deal. So, I keep farting. I just checked the tone amps, well, the current one I've got anyway, positioning in these holes to see if it was going to be, you know, scraping against the, what's it called, the inside of the hole. Got some crap stuck there. I've just got my linear volume pot board. I just want to make sure that after all this, is this going to actually clear the board? Yeah, it clears the board. Now if I move the tone amp, yeah, that's another issue. Might not be much of one, but yeah, just give me 2 seconds. Nah, I thought I'd fucked up even further. I thought the bottom of the PCB of the tone amp was going to come into contact with this connector. No, it doesn't. There's plenty of clearance. It's just the bottom of the board is actually coming into contact with the potentiometer. Of course, if I used a 9mm potentiometer there, well, that would have solved the problem. That is still an option. However, I'm not going to have much of a shaft sticking out the front, and it's going to be a fluted shaft and not a, I think these are called metric shafts. So anyway, so that fits okay. So this is upside down now. This is the bottom of the case. Once this panel goes on, there's just one little issue. They don't supply any feet for these cases. Well, they are designed to mount into a rack, but if you're not going to be mounting into a rack, you're going to need some form of anti-slip and anti-scratch. I do have 4 of these semi-professional looking knobs, feet. I'm just trying to figure out how would I mount it, because, well, I could mount it right up in the corner like so, but yeah, it's going to come into contact with the, well, it's going to cover part of the vent there. I could put it there, but then that means it's quite a fair distance back into the case. For all intents and purposes, that would probably still work. I mean, these feet were going to be used on the other amplifier, but I never got around to mounting them. So I think that's going to look rather strange. I could get just self-adhesive ones, but I wanted something that was semi-professional looking. And that'll do the job, but yeah, the placement again is kind of strange. If these vents were a little bit further that way, that would have fitted nicely, but they're not. So I suppose I could do it like that, and put the other two on the other side like that. I don't know how strange that would look, but yeah. That's another issue I've got to think of. Okay, so I think I've had enough of screwing around with this today. For the most part, the front panel is drilled. I've just got to label it and then protect it. I'll just make sure everything fit. It is quite easy to do a sub panel with this designer rack case, not the ones that JCar sell. They're a pain in the ass. Because you can't do up the screws that go in the back of the handles because, well, the sub panel's in the way and so are the rails. But they do have like two holes, top and bottom, at the back of the case, which I assume there's a special tool designed for the Allen key head screws on rack mount cases to go from the back all the way through to the front, and you do it up that way from the back. It's like a really, really long Allen key, I guess. I suppose there might be a special tool for it, I don't know. This is only ever the 5th, maybe 6th rack case I've ever worked with. But this is the first one that I have ever used the sub panel idea for. And it turned out reasonably successful. I'm quite happy with how it is. So the only thing left to do now is to work out the placement of all the electronics inside the chassis here. But I'm pretty sure by looking at it that it's all going to fit relatively well. I've got plenty of space over this side for the two power amp modules, even if they're brought forward a bit. All I've got to do is clear this switchboard at the front here. Not a great issue, very easy. Yeah, I reckon I can just get away with it. I need to keep room at the back there for the input selector. So the next thing to do would be to redo the preamp, tone amp. Not happy. It started pissing down with the rain. I'm not happy about having to redo it. I should have double checked my measurements. This pot only had to go over 10 mil. This is why you always double check your measurements 3 or 4 times before committing to something, because you can look like a complete fucking idiot, like I just look like a complete fucking idiot. But I left that in as a mistake, so you know, I made a mistake, I fucked up. Now I'm going to have to solve the issue, and that just means, you know, making a new circuit board, making it longer, like deeper, and then just make it narrower the other way, and it'll fix the problem. So yeah, dear. Anyway, I'm going to leave this video here, and the next video is going to be picking up on probably looking at the input selector and doing the back panel part of the hardware, so I can then work out where my power amplifier modules go. I'm going to leave this here, and I will see you in part 5. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.